Way to the studio. The beat is about to start. Hi, Ari. This was fun.
Hey, I really appreciate it. Everyone knows we're a team, but you helped out. I had a minor technical difficulty, and now I'm here. Thank you, Nicole.
Anytime. And I'll do anything. I'll walk your dog. I'll pick up anything for you, my friend. Anything.
I owe you 10 minutes and a dog walk. I'll see you soon. Our thanks again to Nicole Wallace. You are watching The Beat, and we begin tonight with Donald Trump's big news. He has fired Homeland Security Chief Kristi Noem. This is the first cabinet member to be ousted in this entire, sometimes chaotic, Trump second term as of today. It's a big one. Noem overseeing Trump's immigration crackdown, which proved both unpopular, ineffective, and at times lethal against Americans. Her tenure was also marked by widespread reports from internal watchdogs like their inspector general within that department, and independent reporting and accounts from people who worked for her and with her of really erratic and troubled leadership there. In other words, the policy issues are whether ICE was working well. Even Donald Trump clearly wants to make some visible change. And then there's the competence issues. Nicole's guests and our other colleagues have covered this throughout today's breaking news because there were a lot of problems inside that department. Criticism from Republicans. Today, the firing. And there's Noem's chief advisor, who was a longtime Donald Trump campaign figure, Corey Lewandowski. We're told he's also leaving DHS along with her from this news today. Trump plans to nominate a Republican senator, Mullen, to replace her. And remember, we got here from protests. We got here from independent reporting. We got here from people risking life and limb, quite literally, to make their own videos and evidence of what ICE was doing. That all escalated in Minnesota when federal agents swarmed that particular place in these sweeps, and then you saw the pushback and protests around the country. The protests worked. The pushback worked. But it did not come without problems along the way that couldn't be stopped in time, because while the protesters said, hey, let's be careful and peaceful, it was Donald Trump's agents who killed 2 Americans, Renee Good and Alex Petty. Noem also would not take accountability or apologize for falsely branding those people as, quote, domestic terrorists.
It was an act of domestic terrorism. What happened was our ICE officers were out in an enforcement action. They got stuck in the snow because of the adverse weather that is in Minneapolis. They were attempting to push out their vehicle, and a woman attacked them. This individual who came with weapons and ammunition to stop a law enforcement operation of federal law enforcement officers committed an act of domestic terrorism. That's the facts.
Those were not facts. Those, as we've shown you in our reporting, were false claims, stamping that, but showing you that's one of the reasons that may have contributed to her firing today. Trump's approval on immigration has been crashing. It's underwater by 13. He recently skipped over Noem at a cabinet meeting, which was noticeable. And a Republican senator, again, speaking to one piece of this that I mentioned, the outright incompetence. This Republican said her leadership was a disaster.
And what we've seen is a disaster. Under your leadership, Ms. Noem, a disaster. What we've seen is innocent people getting detained that turn out are American citizens. I could talk about the culture that's been created here with Stephen Miller aiding and abetting. The fact that you can't admit to a mistake, which looks like under investigation, is going to prove that Ms. Good and Mr. Petty probably should not have been shot in the face and in the back. We're an exceptional nation. And one of the reasons we're exceptional is we expect exceptional leadership. And you've demonstrated anything but that.
That was a recent Republican view. Noem came to this position from a history in politics, and many viewed her efforts to do branding amidst the Homeland Security project as a kind of political effort that apparently failed, or at least failed with the public when we talk about the numbers, and with Donald Trump ultimately ousting her today. Critics said some of her photo ops verged on the baroque and grotesque. This one speaks for itself. Noem also faced bipartisan criticism over the DHS ads, which cost over $200 million, featuring her. Campaign ad. Noem testified under oath. Trump approved it. Trump disagrees, says it's not true. That's between them. The D.C. outlet Punch Bowl reports he was so angered that her future at DHS was at risk. Then hours after that, what might have been the last straw, given the many substantive problems, that led to Trump firing Noem. We have a lot on this story, really one of the biggest backlashes against Donald Trump working, protests working. What started in Minnesota has now upended Trump's DHS. And we're back on this big news in 90 seconds. President Trump firing DHS Secretary Kristi Noem today, largest firing and the first big one of the cabinet in the Trump second term. I'm joined by Congressman Eric Swalwell, who questioned Noem at a House hearing this week. Your reaction?
Every American tonight is safer, Ari, with Kristi Noem's firing, at least for now. But on her watch, we saw good people, a lot of Californians, arrested and deported, 95% of them who had never committed a violent crime. We also saw Noem spend $220 million on herself in these bizarre glamour ads. And finally, and just as bad as the top two, public executions in our streets. We lost a nurse named Pretty and a mom named Good. And so it can't come fast enough. But of course, there's no confidence that the president will appoint anyone who will take the country in a better direction.
Do you think Democratic opposition and criticism and street protests contributed to this? And can you say which was more important?
Yeah. Well, I want to thank your viewers because they're the ones who go to the No Kings rallies. They're the ones who have publicly protested. There's signs all over Washington, D.C. With Kristi Noem's face saying ICE out. And the American people, have really risen up peacefully in the streets. And my Democratic colleagues in the Senate and the House have held strong, denying the Department of Homeland Security a penny until the public executions stop, the masks come off, the roving bands of terror end. And we've been pretty solid and consistent in that. And the message was clear. We're not going to fund this. And she's not capable of leading that department.
What is the future of ICE and deportation policy now?
Well, Democrats have to stick together here, and we have to continue to try and convince our Republican colleagues who they say often they want to back the blue, but this is not what the blue looks like. Good law enforcement does not go through our communities without a warrant and into your house. They don't shoot people in the public execution fashion as we saw in Minneapolis. They don't wear masks. They don't drag women by their hair and throw them into unmarked vans. They don't chase people through the fields and factories where they work. And so if we can continue to show that that is not law enforcement, that's terror, and until you change that, we're not going to give them a penny. I don't see how ICE or Border Patrol receives any further funding.
She said today that she was heartened by the quote that people sleep peacefully in their beds at night only because rough men stand ready to do violence. What did you think of that as her final thought on her tenure?
Well, I mentioned to her yesterday somebody who does not sleep peacefully in his bed. His name is Miguel Lopez. He was a neighbor of mine in the city of Livermore, California, and he had been in the United States for 30 years, Ari. He went to every court proceeding he was asked to go to, raised his 3 kids in the United States, worked at the same winery where my wife and I were married 10 years ago, went to his court hearing in April, was put in handcuffs and sent to Mexico over a judge's objection who said he should stay here for his due process. His family told me every Sunday night there's an empty chair where Miguel is supposed to sit. He's not sleeping very peacefully. And this individual never committed any crime of violence. And his story is a story of so many in California and across our country.
Understood. And Congressman Swalwell, on a big news night, and you've been in this oversight process with the DHS. Thank you very much. I want to tell folks coming up, we have a White House veteran who is warned about Donald Trump's mental. President Trump firing his DHS chief, Kristi Noem, today. We're joined by Ty Cobb, the former White House attorney who served in the first Trump White House. Ty, of all the things, the outlet in D.C. Punchbowl reported that under questioning, Noem repeatedly said that Trump personally approved what was that controversial ad blitz we showed it moments ago with her in a lead role. Some would call it state propaganda. Others would call it a waste of money. Others might say it's just the usual Trump reality show. They reported it angered Trump so much that her future at DHS was at risk, and then he fired her today. Your thoughts on this story, both that seemingly minor reason on a pile of reasons and what becomes of ICE policy?
So I think at one level it is minor because, this is a mere $200 million as opposed to the $4 billion that the president is on record having enriched himself over the course of the last year. But at the same time, this was a huge mistake. When Congressman Swalwell was talking about the demonstrations and the Democratic criticisms, I don't believe that actually moved Trump at all. What happened, what moved him today was precisely what you just showed, where she associated Trump with this corrupt, ad thing that she did, a $143 million contract to a business that had been incorporated for 8 days, never had any experience, and was associated with one of her subordinates. So that's why Trump fired her. And I think it's a good lesson for Pam Bondi as she goes up next week for the event to which she's been subpoenaed on, her efforts to withhold, critical documents about Trump and his alleged rape of a 13-year-old, among other allegations from the Epstein disclosures. That she better not blame the president for any of those misdeeds. She's going to have to take that bullet herself.
Yeah, you're drawing that connection to multiple scandals that go to ethics, propriety, and promises made. Trump and Bondi made a lot of claims about what Epstein transparency would look like that they've both clearly failed. Overall, when you widen out, Noam is the person carrying out a policy that a lot of independents and moderates and some conservatives oppose, as well as, obviously, the left has been against it from the beginning. If you look at the number here, you have a majority against these tactics and a lot of people saying he's gone too far on immigration. Your thoughts there?
So obviously he's gone too far on immigration. Remember that the promise was to get rid of the, violent offenders, the people that were murderers and rapists and violent criminals. Instead, what we've seen is, the vast majority of people are gardeners, housekeepers, cooks, dishwashers, et cetera, and very few of the people actually deported or detained have any criminal record. So that's not what people voted for. Everybody wants the border secure from violent offenders, but I think in America, where compassion, inclusion are virtues that got us 250 years of the world's deepest affection and admiration, which we've sacrificed in the last year. I think those are the virtues that I think most Americans still hold dear. Now, I mean, I'm glad for certain that Ice Barbie is no longer, and that she and Lewandowski will not get back on the DHS, Sugar Shack plane in their time. But I think you'll see Lewandowski back in some fashion in the government. Remember, he's been dismissed or fired multiple times over the tenure of Trump's first term and this term. So I don't think his influence is going to be gone forever. But I do think Secretary Noem is done. I think that's good. It could be a predicate to a couple of other terminations. I think Pam Bondi, of course, is certainly worse than Noem in the sense that the damage that she has done to the rule of law. But I think we might see some changes there. Hopefully we will. On the other hand, the replacements that are likely don't bring a lot of confidence to people. I think, Mark Wayne Mullen, zero experience in law enforcement or foreign affairs of the kind that most DHS secretaries have had historically, at a time where, we're at DEFCON 5 in terms of being at war. We've got terrorists from, Iranian Hezbollah, Iranian Kurds. We've got a lot of problems that could potentially wreak havoc in the United States and elsewhere that need the kind of experience and competence that we just don't see in this cacostocracy of inept people from Hegseth to Patel.
Yeah, you're laying it out there and reminding everyone DHS is especially key when you're looking at the real foreign threats, which might go up in a regional war. Ty Cobb, we always appreciate your experience and wisdom. Thank you, sir.
Good to be with you, Ari.
Yeah, appreciate it. We have a lot coming up. It's more questions about what the plan is, what are we doing in Iran, which of recent rationales are true, if any. We have a seasoned foreign policy expert, Max Boot. He's at the National Security Studies Council on Foreign Relations fellow. He's a Washington Post columnist. He's been thinking about these issues most of his career. What's important to understand about this Iran war right now?
Well, I think what's important to understand, Ari, is that I think you're seeing kind of a split screen. On the one hand, you're seeing the incredible professionalism and effectiveness of the U.S. military, right? Because they're talking about all these targets that they're going after, and they've had tremendous success, beginning with the killing of Ayatollah Khamenei and so many other Iranian leaders, and now going after their arsenal, their weapons, all that other stuff. They're doing that very effectively. But then you don't see a similar level of competence, nothing that inspires, faith on the side of the civilians and in the administration. You see folks like Pete Hegseth or Donald Trump who are very clearly blustering and kind of making it up as you go along. And I feel like we've kind of seen this movie before, because this is really the story of the last quarter century. We have tremendous U.S. tactical military success, but it doesn't translate into strategic long-term gains. And that's the challenge in Iran, is can they somehow go from blowing a lot of things up to transforming the nature of the Iranian regime? And so far, I don't see much evidence of that happening.
Right, and it's echoes of Venezuela and other things where the U.S. can do it. It can do a lot. But what happens with the impact? And in some sense, what haunts you is the greater the impact, the more then you have to, as we've learned in past Middle East excursions, the more you have to figure out, oh, wow, we really did topple that government, or we really did change the region. Now what if you have these other problems that come back? I want to show you and the audience how Donald Trump so vigorously and repeatedly vowed not to do the regime change style war he's doing now.
I will tell you, you're not going to have a war with me, and you're not going to have a third world war with me. I will also restore peace through strength, and I will prevent World War III from happening. These globalists want to squander all of America's strength, blood, and treasure, chasing monsters and phantoms overseas. Our current strategy of nation building and regime change is a proven absolute failure. I'm not going to start a war. I'm going to stop wars.
I mean, I think there's always been this tension in what Trump says, because on the one hand, as you from the clips you're playing, this was a huge part of his appeal. This was a huge part of the reason why he was elected, running against the Iraq War, running against the American interventions in the Middle East. But on the other hand, he's always been kind of the swaggering macho, loves the U.S. military, promises to torture terrorists and their families, all that kind of stuff. So it's basically a combination of isolationism and militarism. I would say in his second term, not so much isolationism, it's all militarism. It's really militarism on steroids, because I think my sense is that President Trump has really become enamored of the use of military force, because he's had some, what he views as successes, blowing up General Qasem Soleimani in 2020, blowing up Iranian nuclear installations last June, kidnapping Maduro in Venezuela in January. So now he thinks that the U.S. military is invincible. But this is the largest war he has started on his watch. He started a lot of wars. He's bombed 8 countries. But this is the largest one. It's the biggest gamble. It's the one that involves regime change seemingly without a plan. So I think Trump is going to learn, as previous presidents have learned, the limits of U.S. military capability, that they can blow a lot of things up, but they can't necessarily transform countries in the Middle East.
I have 30 seconds. What is the best off-ramp for the U.S.?
Well, I suspect the likeliest off-ramp is that Trump is probably going to tire this war in a few weeks. You're going to see oil prices keep going up, economic turmoil threatening Republican chances in the midterm elections. And he's probably going to say, we won. We've obliterated their Navy. We've obliterated their nuclear forces. We've obliterated their military. They will never threaten the region again. In fact, he was saying something very similar to that already today. And then he will kind of wash his hands of it and say, it's up to the Iranians what they want to do next. But, we could always do this again. So I suspect he'll walk away and probably leave a wounded but still dangerous regime in power in Tehran.
Max Boot, thank you. That's really good perspective on what is unfolding here, and we're all watching it happen. I want to tell folks Welcome to the Summit Series with Ari Melber, where we speak to leaders at the summit of their fields. Tonight's guest is a defining figure of Wall Street's success, one of the most consequential leaders during and after the 2008 crash, longtime Goldman Sachs CEO Lloyd Blankfein. The CEO has been heralded and criticized. The New York Times reported he handled the financial crisis better than all the firm's rivals and had the longest run atop the firm in half a century. The paper also reported he became a lightning rod for objections to how Wall Street operates.
Time for this morning's mover and shaker, and today it is Goldman Sachs CEO Lloyd Blankfein.
Goldman is known on Wall Street for escalating the pay. Blankfein is a supporter of setting industry standards.
Blankfein was awarded a $68 million bonus, the most ever for a Wall Street CEO.
A dozen CEOs get ready to meet President Obama today to discuss the fiscal cliff. The Goldman Sachs chief has unveiled a business plan for American revival.
He's been a lifer at Goldman Sachs, right? As you say, he started in the 80s.
He said that Goldman Sachs, among a number of organizations, failed to sound the alarm bells throughout the crisis.
Lloyd Blankfein, newly minted billionaire.
Lloyd Blankfein looks at himself as being a risk manager.
Lloyd Blankfein is preparing to leave Goldman Sachs.
If we look at share price performance since he took over, it's clear that while behind that of JP Morgan, it's significantly better than some of the other banks.
After 40 years of running around the world and living in the macro markets, it's a little bit hard to drop it.
Blankfein is out with a new book, Streetwise: Getting to and Through Goldman Sachs, recounting a journey from New York public housing to Harvard to the top of Wall Street, where Blankfein became as big a house. Fine joins the Summit Series now. Welcome.
Good to see you, Ari. Who's that guy in a suit?
You're more casual these days.
Well, I was pretty casual back then, too.
That's memory lane. I want to get into all of it.
Sure.
The book starts with young Lloyd in public housing.
Yep.
East New York, Brownsville.
East New York.
East New York.
Brooklyn. Linden projects.
So you're in the projects. What part of that prepared you for the world you were entering? Because in the book, you talk about developing your sense of self, but also having a kind of an imposter feeling.
I would say the best thing, and the first, I call the first chapter Advantages, which is kind of ironic because some people would think that would just advantage. We lived in, with my, we were we were 4 generations because my grandmother lived with us and my sister's baby lived with us and my parents in a relatively small apartment. But I would say there was not any direct preparation, but I got a lot out of that experience. What I got out of that was motivation.
Do you remember the rap group Tribe Called Quest?
No.
They were...
Why don't you hum a few bars?
Well, I got some for you.
Okay.
Because reading your book, they have a couple songs. One, they say, back in the days on the boulevard of Linden, we used to kick routines and the presence was fitting. They have another hit song where they say, Linden Boulevard, represent, represent, when the mic is in my hand, I'm never hesitant.
Well, that was the big street, Linden Boulevard.
Linden.
Where I lived, yes.
So it's striking. That's in the culture. You had your road out, other people had their road out, but you were coming up in a place that was obviously diverse, and a lot of people, however much they loved that neighborhood, knew that they were not necessarily reaping the benefits of America at the time.
I wish I had thought of it at the time, but I think I was pre-rap.
Yeah, right. Well, you were. They came later than you.
Yes.
But that neighborhood, looking at that now, you feel like, wow, I made it out, and I would have not had that motivation had I started somewhere else.
I think that, that's certainly right. Now, that's not to say, there's always probabilities and statistics. I think, I'd like to say that I'm representative of what anybody could accomplish if they're properly motivated. But, if you're properly motivated, you still have to be lucky.
This is much broader than the financial sector or banks. The CEO pay across the entire economy has risen by over 1,000% from the 70s. And worker pay is up only about 26%, not keeping pace with inflation. Is that a market failure? Is that a problem?
Yes, inequality and distribution. Again, as I said, the economy in general has to do 2 things: create the wealth and distribute it according to values. And you look at that, and in good times where everybody's being elevated, there tends to be a relaxation of concern if somebody's getting elevated more. But at times when people are just getting by, It's infuriating to see that people are getting spectacular multiples of it, even if that's what the market is compelling. So I think it is a political problem today and a social problem, but one has to pay a lot of money for NFL quarterbacks, and people pay a lot of money for effective CEOs.
Let me ask you philosophically, because it's very clear that you're bright, and all these other bright people say that you're bright. You have Harvard Law, and you run this thing, and now you're retired. Philosophically, is there a level of wealth that one person should hit their ceiling, whether it's $1 billion or 10 billion or 100 billion or an era where we hear we may have the first trillionaire? Is there some level that you see that as a philosophical matter that says it's a limit?
People are different. There are people, look, the people who are killing themselves the most, I think the most competitive people in the moment today are these hyperscalers. What are hyperscalers? The Metas of the world, the biggest companies of the world who are competing like crazy. Who's going to be the first to artificial intelligence? Yeah. Who's going to be the social networks of the next time? I'm glad these people are still competitive and still want to win and still want to make up. The only thing you can do with that money at the end of the day is give it away, and that's what they're doing. The idea of a cap, it's a phony thing. You want to continue to incentivize the best people. In different cultures, there are different incentives. You know, people work very hard in China. Nobody makes that much money, but the currency that they're dealing with is fame, acclaim, status within the party. If you